The peace agreement and the sixth trumpet war of Revelation 9 seem to be connected with world events. And today we are going to talk about them. So, the first headline we're going to look at and discuss is what the Pope said about the war in the Middle East. The Pope calls for Israel, Palestinians to halt spiral of death. Pope Francis said he had been greatly saddened by the news of the Palestinians killed during Israeli counterterrorism operations, as well as by the deaths of Israeli Jews in a synagogue terror attack. On Friday, the 27th of January, there was a terror attack in Israel in the city of David. Now, why is this all relevant to Bible prophecy? Because the tensions in the Middle East are rising. There is war brewing in the Middle East. While the world is looking at Ukraine and Russia with NATO partners sending resources, money, tank, food, whatever it is that they need, the Bible tells us that there's a war that will emanate from the Euphrates River, which is right there in the Middle East. Let's look at that. It says, Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. So here in Revelation, it's telling us about four angels that were bound. That's how we know that they are bad. They are up to no good. And the hour, the day, and the year, the month and the year, God is going to release those angels. And those angels are going to cause a war. It's going to kill a third of mankind. Right now, in the world, the population is close to 8 billion, right at 8 billion. Now, we will never know the exact number, but right at 8 billion is where we're sitting. And a third of that would be about 2.6 billion people. 2.6 billion. No war ever in the history of the world has lost that many. That lets us know that this war will be nuclear. So, going back to Ukraine and Russia, everyone's talking about Russia. Russia's ready to use nukes. Who they're going to use them on, we don't know. Now, because that war is ongoing, there's no war in the Middle East right now except for the Israelis and the Palestinians. Now, Iran is involved in the back door, and we know that Israel is watching Iran very close. And we know that Israel has been using drones to attack Iran. And at some point, that will also escalate, which is still in the region of the Euphrates River. Now, this verse tells us that there's going to be an army of the horsemen was 200 million. Now, what country has that many that can field an army of 200 million? Some say China with a population of 1.4 billion people, but their army size actively is only just over 2 million. Just over 2 million, not 200 million. Now, do they have the men if they need it to field an army that size? Maybe. But let's think about this. We are talking about a war that emanates in the Middle East. The Palestinians, we are talking about Iran, and we're talking about Israel. Israel is surrounded by Arabs. Now, could the Arabs or the Muslim community, could they field an army of 200 million? I think so. They definitely have the numbers because the Muslims are about 2 point, there are about 1.6 billion. They're right there neck and neck with the Christian population. So they could easily have a presence of 200 million on the battlefield. Now, Deacon John is not saying that that's how it's going to be. We're talking about what the Bible is saying. The Bible says that the army of the horsemen will be 200 million. So we're just discussing who could field that. China could field it, maybe, but we know that the Muslim community could field it easily with 1.6 billion strong. We're only talking about 200 million. Now, who would be a part of that 1/3 being killed? We don't know. What we do know is if the war begins in the Middle East, then what's going on over in Russia and Ukraine is going to escalate. China will come in, pursue Taiwan. North Korea may come in, trying to pursue South Korea. North Korea pursuing South Korea. There's a lot of things that could be going on that we can't say for sure, but in order to kill that many people, a third of mankind, there's a lot that has to be going on. It just won't be in the Middle East. Okay? So that's where we are as far as world events, what's going on, and what the Bible says. Now let's move on to the next article. The next article says, I appeal to the two governments and the international community, and I ask them to find immediately, without wasting any time, other paths which include dialogue and a sincere search for peace. Now, he talked about there the international community. We know the international community is going to be involved because when the peace agreement is established, there's going to be a new arrangement of land. So it's going to be Israel's going to give up land for peace. John was told to build the temple in Revelation 11. Let's look at that. Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. For 42 months. So outside the temple, it would be trodden down by the Gentiles for 42 months, 3.5 years. So for 3.5 years, the outer courts will be trodden down by the Gentiles, non-Jews. The international community will be in place to maintain peace throughout the term of the peace agreement between the Israelis and the Arab nations, more specifically the Palestinians. Okay, that's what the Bible is telling us. Now, I have lessons on all of these that gives greater detail on what we're talking about, greater detail. You can click on those as well. That this lesson is not about that. Now, the peace agreement. So also, he talked about the dialogue for peace. Now we know that there's going to be a peace agreement because the Bible tells us there's going to be a peace agreement, and we know that from Daniel 9. Let's look at that. Let's look at that again for those who have not seen it, who first time, because we talk about this a lot. Daniel 9:27. Let's look at that right now. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. So there's going to be a 7-year peace agreement, not a 7-year tribulation period. There's nowhere in the Bible that talks about a 7-year tribulation period. There's a 7-year peace agreement that will be interrupted halfway through, in the middle. That's what the Bible says, in the middle of that 1 year, or that 1 week, which is a week of years. That 1 year, it's 1 week, which is 7 years. So halfway through the 7 years, or the week of years, there's going to be he's going to sever the peace agreement. He's going to sever the peace agreement. So it's only for 3.5 years. Okay, so the 7 years, so we're talking about 3.5 years. The Jews are going to be allowed to continue the sacrifices, and he's going to stop the sacrifices. The Antichrist is the he. He's going to stop the sacrifices. And after the sacrifices, that's when the Great Tribulation period begins. So that's 3.5 years. Remember, the temple is going to be trodden down by the Gentiles for 3.5 years. So while they're offering sacrifices for the first 3.5 years, in the middle, he stopped the sacrifices. That's what we just read, 927. 3.5 years. Everything lines up if we know what to look for and understand what God has given us. I've said in the very beginning, prophecy is like a puzzle, and it's all about finding the right pieces, turning and twisting and putting them in place where they fit perfectly. Not where they almost fit, but they have to fit. Let's move on. In the article, it goes on to say, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday pledged a strong, swift, and precise response to the synagogue terror attack on the outskirts of Jerusalem, as its military sent more troops into the West Bank. So the West Bank. Right now, they're sending troops into the West Bank. Remember, Israel is going to give up land for peace. And that land is going to be Judea, or the West Bank. How do we know that? Because Jesus told us. He tells us in Matthew 24. Let's look at it. It says, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, that is the Antichrist, going into the temple, the holy place, and he's stopping the sacrifices, and he's going to claim to be God. At that point, the tribulation period, the 3.5 year tribulation period, will begin. So here in this verse, the Jews are being told to flee to the mountains. Don't go back into your home, because when we have this peace agreement, the Jews and the Palestinians will live together, but the Jews will now have to live under Palestinian rule, which is not the way it is right now. Right now, Israel rules, Israel governs that. But now the Palestinians will govern the West Bank. And when the Antichrist stops the sacrifices and claims to be God, all the rules change. At some point, the Palestinians are going to realize that they have more power, or the Jews are going to be the Jews are going to fall up under this tribulation, where they will be tortured for 3.5 years, persecuted. I don't know how that's going to happen, but we know it will happen because we're going to see on live TV. There's nothing in the world that we can't see, because news is everywhere, with the satellites in the skies everywhere. We're going to know when this man of perdition, the evil one, walks into the temple. He's going to stop. There's going to be news reports. We will know for certain that that will be the Antichrist. And we will know that the Great Tribulation period will begin. The one world government will be in place. There will be great changes for that 3.5 year period. Again, Jesus tells them, do not go back home. Do not go collect your coat. He says, flee to the mountains. You don't want to get caught in the West Bank, because the Palestinians now control that. They rule that area. So those are the pieces. This is what's happening in the world. These are the headlines, and all the headlines that we cover here, most of them that you read, they are lining up biblical prophecy. And you won't know that until you begin to understand. So if you haven't already, go back, look at my previous lessons, look at the playlist. Look at the playlist for the final 7 years, how everything lines up from the very beginning. Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, how everything lines up, because you have to know all the key players, the key elements, and how God has spoken to us so that we understand and don't get caught. Do not get caught like the Jews did when Jesus came. He walked with them, he spoke with them, yet they missed him. With everything that's going on, with all the technology and people getting chips and all the pestilence that's going on, you're not going to know we're in the end times unless you understand. Daniel 11:33. What is Daniel 11:33? Daniel 11:33 says, "For those that understand amongst the people shall instruct many." We are instructing, and we're looking for you to understand so that you may instruct as well. Until next time, thank you for joining me, and thank you for allowing me to spend time with you as we discuss the return of Jesus Christ.